Today, our fortune fits in our pocket. It is digital, invisible. But what if I told you that for most of human history, money was not made of paper or gold, but of stones impossible to move? And that entire civilizations based their power on shells, tiny ones retrieved from the ocean floor? This is not a fantasy story. It is the bizarre reality of economics. Forget Bitcoin. Forget credit cards. We are talking about an era where your wealth could be a cigarette, a pressed block of tea, or a piece of limestone the weight of a car. These strange, seemingly useless objects were the secret pillars of empires and the hidden engine of human survival. What is the true value of money? Is it the metal it is made of? The promise of a government? Or is it, simply and purely, a story we agree to believe? Let's travel back in time to unearth the deepest and most unusual secrets of trade. Prepare to meet the wildest, most illogical, and absolutely fascinating side of economic history. You will discover why the concept of value was never where you thought it was. Case 1. The Stone Money of Yap, Micronesia. To begin our expedition into the unusual, we must travel to the heart of the Pacific Ocean, to a remote and rarely visited archipelago, the Yap Islands in Micronesia. Here, the concept of wealth doesn't just challenge modern logic, it tramples on physics. Imagine the most valuable currency in your world. Is it a diamond? Is it gold? On the island of Yap, for centuries, it was the rye stones. We're not talking about decorative pebbles. These are massive discs, carved out of limestone with a hole in the center. Some reaching the size of a modern van and weighing 4 tons. So large that the word wallet loses all meaning. They were, quite literally, impossible to steal and most of the time impossible to move. The irony, the mystery, lies exactly here. Yap's most valuable currency almost never left its spot. It would lean against a palm tree at the edge of the village or be semi-buried in the forest. And yet, it constantly changed hands. Ownership was transferred through an act of collective oral agreement. The value was not in the physical presence of the stone in your yard, but in the story that the entire community told about it. It was essentially a decentralized public ledger, an organic blockchain maintained by the collective memory of a people. Think about this. A man buys a canoe for 10 rye. He simply announces to the community, that stone over there, the big one, the one with the green moss, now belongs to the fisherman. Everyone in the village memorized that transaction. If, years later, the fisherman wanted to use that same stone to buy land, he didn't need to drag it. He only needed to trigger the community's memory. It was the first frictionless money in history. But the mystery deepens. These gigantic stones were not native to Yap. The limestone they are made of had to be quarried from a neighboring island, Palau, more than 400 kilometers away, via a perilous ocean voyage in rudimentary canoes. The rye were therefore the crystallization of effort, risk, and even human sacrifice. When a new rye stone arrived on Yap, the community did not ask, "How big is it?" They asked, "What is its story?" The most valuable rye were those whose journeys had been the longest and most dangerous, those where men had died bringing them back. A stone with a story of tragedy and heroism was sometimes worth more than a larger stone brought back peacefully. It was the narrative and not the raw material that conferred the price. And what happens if one of these stones, on a particularly stormy voyage, fell into the sea and was lost forever at the bottom of the Pacific? The Yap community would decide, by consensus, that the submerged stone still existed and still held value. Everyone remembered that the chief owned it. He could continue to use it in important transactions, just as we use an invisible digital currency today. Money, in this system, was purely a function of belief and mutual trust. This incredibly sophisticated system lasted for hundreds of years. It was only at the end of the 19th century, with the arrival of an Irish captain named David O'Keefe, that this perfect market faced its collapse. O'Keefe realized the folly of manual labor and introduced iron technology and explosives to extract rye from Palau en masse. In a short time, the Yap market was flooded with new, easy stones. O'Keefe ironically industrialized the creation of money. Inflation hit the island with brutal violence. The value plummeted because the narrative of sacrifice had been broken. Yap money teaches us a timeless and dark lesson. When it becomes too easy to create what is supposed to be scarce, the entire system of belief collapses. Money, after all, is not a stone. It is a promise kept by everyone. And the story of Yap is the strangest and most monumental proof that the true currency is, and always has been, trust. Case 2. Shell money, cowries and the ocean of wealth. If Yap's stone money taught us that currency is trust, Our next relic proves that currency is, in fact, a work of art from nature. For over 3,000 years, spanning continents, from the west coast of Africa to the depths of Asia and even colonial Brazil, the dominant currency was neither gold nor silver. It was the cowrie shell, and not just any cowrie. They were the Cypraea moneta and Cypraea annulis shells, small, whitish, with a ventral opening that gave them a mysterious, almost mystical appearance. Why did these seashells on their own become the engine of trade? The answer lies in their perfect design. They were durable. They were difficult to counterfeit. Native communities had a deep knowledge of the rare species. They were easy to count, stack, and, crucially, easy to transport. They functioned as nature's fractional currency, enabling transactions from buying a basket of fruit to paying a marriage dowry, or even, sadly, the purchase of human beings in the slave trade. Their value was stable and universally accepted, a testament to shared belief across civilizations separated by thousands of miles. The mystery is geographical. The largest source of these shells, their mint, was almost exclusively concentrated in the Maldives Islands and the coast of Oman. The natural scarcity, the difficulty and danger of transporting them across the oceans gave them their precious and undeniable rarity. But just like the story of the rice stones, the fate of the cowries was sealed by external greed and the arrival of Western shipping technology. When the ships of merchants and colonial powers, first the Portuguese, then the Dutch and British, discovered this system, they saw an opportunity for untold wealth. They quickly identified the supply source in the Maldives, which had been overlooked by Europe. Suddenly, they had unlimited access to the money-making machine of Africa and Asia. European ships, with their massive cargo capabilities, no longer had to carry heavy and expensive precious metals. Instead, they filled their holds with tons of cowries collected cheaply in the Indian Ocean and flooded the markets of West and Central Africa. What happened next was one of the first and most devastating crises of hyperinflation caused by external intervention in history. The money supply, which was previously carefully limited by nature and precarious transport, exploded. Overnight, a bag of cowries that once bought a robust pig could now barely pay for a handful of grain. The value of everything, goods, labor, land, collapsed. Imagine the tragedy. What for the Europeans was just a new commercial instrument, for the local communities was the end of social stability. Uncontrolled inflation dismantled regional economies, destroyed generations of savings, and left vast populations impoverished. This episode of Inflation by Ship is not just a historical footnote, it is a somber case study on the fragility of currency, even when it appears to be the most robust medium of exchange in the world. The cowrie shell, which survived empires and millennia, succumbed to the simple premise that scarcity is the only guarantor of value. When labor and technology make money abundant, the society that uses it pays the highest price. And the final touch of historical irony? While cowries were shipped to Africa to buy slaves and raw materials, their spiritual and cultural value in Asia and African communities persisted. Today, these shells are still used in rituals, divination, and adornments, proving that their transcendent symbolism was, in the end, more lasting than their economic value. This is the cycle of money, from something rare and sacred to something mundane and destructive, and finally back to a symbol of cultural memory and resilience. Case 3. Cigarette currency. Money in war camps. We have just seen money as trust and money as natural scarcity. Now, let's explore money in its most visceral form. The economics of survival. During World War II, in Allied prisoner of war camps, there existed a closed society, isolated from the world, where fiat currency was worthless and gold was useless. There were no banks, there were no cards, just the desperate urgency to stay alive. In this financial and moral vacuum, a form of currency emerged that was as unlikely as it was effective: the cigarette. For a prisoner, a cigarette was not just tobacco, it was a multifunctional asset. For the smoker, it was an invaluable psychological relief. For the non-smoker, it was the most liquid and transactable commodity one could possess. It worked like gold. It was divisible. It could be sold by unit. It was portable. And crucially, it came from an external and recognized source, the Red Cross supply. In short order, the camps developed a complex and remarkably efficient market system. Economists studying the diaries and internal records of these camps after the war called it one of the purest market experiments in history. Here, the law of supply and demand was exposed in its rawest form, without government interference, taxes, or interest rates. The cigarette currency defined the price of everything. A piece of chocolate might cost 2 cigarettes, an extra portion of food rations was worth 4. And the privilege of passing information or getting a special favor could cost an entire pack. The cigarette was the common denominator of every need and desire. But the economy of these camps was terribly volatile, an inflation roller coaster. Think about the supply. The cigarette was the only currency they couldn't create. It came in shipments from the Red Cross. When a Red Cross ship arrived with a large shipment of packs, the market was instantly flooded. Inflation shot up overnight. Suddenly, the coffee mug that cost 1 cigarette now cost 3. Because there was more money in circulation. Prisoners didn't need complex mathematical models to understand monetary dynamics. They felt it in the flesh. Conversely, if the supply was delayed or interrupted due to the war, the cigarette currency became scarce. The value skyrocketed. Forced deflation turned a single cigarette into an extreme luxury good, an asset to be saved, traded, and even loaned out at implied interest rates. This improvised economy reveals a fundamental truth. The nature of money lies not in its nobility, like gold, or its history, like the rye, but in its utility and acceptance. In an environment where the only utility is survival and the only acceptance is necessity, tobacco, a substance that kills, becomes the sustenance of life. The final and most bitter irony is that, despite this entire ingenious system, cigarettes were not used by everyone. There was a small group of prisoners who refused to smoke but accepted cigarettes as payment. They were the most astute reserve capitalists. They didn't consume the currency. They accumulated it and used it to buy essential goods at low prices during peaks of inflation. The prisoner of war camps, created to dehumanize, ultimately generated an economic microcosm that exposed the universal laws of the market more clearly than any stock exchange. And it all revolved around a toxic product. Money, after all, is hope encapsulated in a product that everyone desires, even if only to survive one more day. Case 4. Salt, tea, and cocoa. The taste of money. If survival in the war camps created the cigarette currency, ancient times prove that, across vast empires, money could be something that kept us alive. Food, flavor, and the essential ingredient. This is the most delicious chapter in the history of currency, where wealth was not meant to be saved, but to be consumed. Let's start with the etymology that still governs our work today. The word salary has its roots in Rome, in the salarium, which literally means payment in salt, or the amount given to a soldier so he could buy his salt. In a world without refrigeration, salt was the most powerful and vital preservative for the survival of the legions on long campaigns. It was the cryptocurrency of the diet. Although historical records suggest that salt was more of a bonus or an allowance for the purchase of something so strategic, its importance was monumental. Control of salt was control of an empire's health and logistics. To have salt was not a luxury, it was security. Thus, the etymology remains a linguistic fossil, reminding us that our payment, our modern salary, has its origins in a packet of sodium chloride. Let's jump to the east, to China, Tibet, and Mongolia, where the dominant currency for centuries was the pressed tea brick. Imagine a solid block of fermented tea leaves pressed under high pressure. Not only was it a compact and durable way to transport a valuable commodity, but it was also divisible. It was possible to break off a corner of the brick for small transactions. What made the tea brick so valuable was its multifunctionality. In Mongolia and Tibet, regions where tea cultivation was impossible and the diet was rich in meat and dairy, tea was a vital source of vitamins and a luxury good. It functioned simultaneously as currency, as food, it was often added to soups, and as a beverage. Thus, money could literally be drunk to warm a traveler, or sold to buy a horse. About 120 bricks could buy a sturdy camel, according to records. The bricks were even stamped with intricate designs, like a security seal, to prevent counterfeiting, the first edible watermark. Finally, we travel to Mesoamerica, to the Aztec Empire. Here, the currency that linked the gods to men and the market to the temple was the cocoa bean. The Aztecs and Mayas believed that cocoa was a gift from the god Quetzalcoatl. The drink was reserved for rituals and elites. But due to its rarity and the difficulty of cultivation in some regions, the bean became an official currency. The value was surprising and detailed. 4 cocoa beans could buy a rabbit. 100 beans bought a slave, interestingly in the 16th century. This system was so robust that, even after the Spanish conquest, cocoa continued to be used as a fractional currency alongside European silver and gold coins, enduring until the 19th century in some areas. However, cocoa had a fatal flaw as a currency. It could be consumed. Like salt and tea, there was a constant temptation to remove the currency from circulation and turn it into pleasure or nutrition. And of course, it could be counterfeited by filling the cocoa husks with dirt or sand. But its importance was such that the bean functioned as the federal reserve of that civilization. These examples, salt, tea, cocoa, show that, throughout history, money is not just a tool of exchange. It is the materialization of primary necessity. Before civilizations trusted shiny metals or paper with promises, they trusted the things that prevented hunger, preserved life, and made the world, however briefly, more flavorful. Sometimes, the smartest money is the money that keeps us alive. Case 5. Digital money. Value in the invisible age. Throughout this journey, we have seen money evolve from material gold to edible salt, and from there to community consensus. But our final chapter presents the ultimate paradox. The future of money, digital money, is merely a repetition of an idea that is over 1,000 years old. The irony? To understand the most futuristic of currencies, Bitcoin and its blockchain architecture, we must travel to Yap Island, Micronesia, where money was made of stone. Known as rye stones, these currencies were massive limestone discs, perforated in the center, which could weigh several tons. They were so large that moving them was almost impossible. The value of a rye stone depended on its size, its beauty, and crucially the life story and sacrifices made to bring it from the neighboring island of Palau. The cost of transport, the difficulty of production, was what gave them value. But here lies the philosophical connection to the 21st century. The value of a rye stone did not reside in its physical location. When a rye stone changed hands, it was not moved, it simply stayed put. Instead, the change of ownership was recorded in the island's oral history, known by all. It was a public agreement, maintained by collective consensus. The Yapese people, in essence, operated the world's first analog blockchain. The stone was the symbol of value, but the real money was the information and the shared trust in the human network. Economists often cite the example of a rye stone that fell off a raft to the bottom of the ocean. It was never recovered, but the Yapese continued to trade it, as everyone knew who its owner was. The money was invisible, but the ledger, maintained by community consensus, was immutable. This system worked for centuries, until a foreigner, David O'Keefe, in the late 19th century, brought the technology of explosions and steel tools. O'Keefe began quarrying rye stones en masse from Palau, drastically reducing the cost of production and flooding the island. This was the first 51% attack in the history of money. By breaking the scarcity and the cost of the mining, or quarrying, O'Keefe caused trust in the stone system to collapse. The rye currency lost its value, proving that the hardest money, the stone, was vulnerable to easy production. Fast forward to 2008. Facing the global financial crisis, the mysterious Satoshi Nakamoto proposes a digital currency, Bitcoin, operating on a decentralized network without banks or governments. Nakamoto solves the problem of easy production, O'Keefe's problem, through cryptography. The blockchain is Yap Island's public, distributed ledger, but maintained by code and thousands of computers worldwide. The stone is the data block, sealed with a cryptographic hash that links it to the previous block. The act of mining a new block is intentionally difficult and energy-intensive. The new cost of production that guarantees scarcity, the proof of work. The transfer of Bitcoin is, like the rye, a mere update of the public ledger. The value is not in the bytes or bits, but in the fact that it is impossible, or computationally prohibitive, for an individual to alter a record, just as it was impossible to move and steal a rye stone. Digital money is proof that for money to work, we don't need a shiny, edible, or gigantic physical object. We just need a shared record that is hard to falsify or impossible to erase. The lesson of Bitcoin and the rye stones is the same. True currency is trust encoded in a ledger, whether oral or digital. The money of the future, invisible and global, is the oldest of ideas. From giant stones in the Pacific to invisible codes on global servers, money is, without a doubt, humanity's strangest and most powerful psychological invention. We analyze the salt that founded the word salary, the fragility of the shells that succumbed to colonial inflation, and the cigarettes that proved to be the most liquid asset in hell. And we discovered that, fundamentally, Bitcoin and the rye stones are the same thing. Complex systems that only work when a vast and decentralized network agrees to believe. The final lesson is simple. Money was never about what it's made of, metal, paper, or byte. It is just a story of trust that we all, collectively, agree to sustain. The real value lies in consensus and scarcity, not in the raw material. So, the next time you pay with your phone, remember, you are participating in the latest chapter of a 5,000-year experiment on human belief. Which of these bizarre currencies surprised you the most? The stone that sank but was still valuable, or the cigarette that saved lives? Comment below and let's debate the true meaning of wealth. If this journey through history intrigued you, show your support. Like this video, subscribe to the Hidden Hoards Files and hit the bell. Only then can you ensure you do not miss the next chapter on the forgotten treasures and mysteries of history.